Good afternoon. This is Chris Riley with System Source. Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to giving you some good information to help you continue to secure your environment. So today we'll be looking at how do we both prevent security breaches, but also how do we kind of prevent them, detect them, and then how do we respond, and how do we do this really 24/7 since the threats are coming nonstop, but we still have to sleep. So we'll be looking at all those things. I'm joined today by Mike Hoffman with Barracuda, and he'll be doing the bulk of the presentation today. All right, just a little bit about the agenda. I'll do a few introductory remarks, and then Mike will dive into looking at what do we have to learn from the latest cybersecurity threat intelligence, and particularly about AI-generated cyber attacks. So we're really talking more about AI as both creating attacks, but also AI is also being utilized in the tools to mount an effective prevention and detection and response scenario as well. And Mike will dive into that today. We'll look at how these kinds of tools can help with meeting the requirements or meeting cybersecurity insurance, regulatory compliance requirements. Since all the tools that we have in place can help lower those cybersecurity premiums, those types of things. We'll talk about proactive approaches. We'll talk about how this develops a kind of a faster response time. And also, how does this all help when we have a lean IT staff? Most IT staffs are wearing lots of hats. How do we make sure that you have the tech or the skill sets and the expertise that you need when you need it? All right, a little bit of housekeeping first. We hope you have your pizza. If not, just note Julie Dellinger's email address on the screen. If it doesn't show up here shortly to your office or home, go ahead and reach out to Julie and she'll be happy to help you with that. During the webinar, the audio is in presentation mode, so you'll be able to hear myself and Mike, but we won't be able to hear you, but we do that so that any background noise, music on hold, those types of things that maybe where a participant is, don't come through to the whole group. However, you can reach me at any point during the webinar through the chat tab, as well as just drop any questions that you have right into the questions tab. We're going to save those up right to the end, and we'll do a Q&A at the end. I'll read those questions out to Mike, and he'll be able to respond to those. Presentation and the recording will be made available to you later on today, so you don't have to write furiously. And then finally, there is a short, by short I mean like 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, if you get distracted in the middle, evaluation. Let us know how we did today, but also let us know what information might be useful to you for additional resources to kind of help you in your evaluation planning around security. And I'll talk more about that at the very end. A little bit about System Source. For those who are new, we'll be brief on this. So we've been around since 1981. There's about 70 of us at System Source, and we work with clients and primarily IT professionals, South Central Pennsylvania, all through Central Maryland, down to the Washington, D.C. area, as well as national companies that have headquarters here in this region. So a lot of folks come to us when they first need to acquire technology. So we do work on both the end-user computing side, laptops, desktops, printers, but probably 80+% of the work that we do is in the data center, whether in the traditional on-prem data center or in its cloud or other variants. So working in Azure or Amazon Web Services, all the hosted facilities, colo facilities, etc. So regardless of where you put those data center resources, servers, storage, networking, wireless, security-related devices, firewalls, switching, regardless of where those live physically, we can kind of help both design, install, support across any of those types of areas, including really what most people are in is a hybrid with resources in a number of those different resources. People acquire things because they really need to improve. So one area we just kind of touched on was cloud services. The other is consulting, where our top-level consultants do the type of work I just talked about in the data center. Training is where our security and other classes kind of live. So we've got 700+ classes at any one point on our training schedule. You can access right on the website. But that's going to be in security-related topics and about 2 or 3 dozen other types of topics. For example, both manufacturer specific, so for example, Cisco, or kind of general topics for example, just security. So and you can dive into those. And then present is professional AV, so all the Teams rooms, et cetera, for huddle spaces, conference rooms, auditoriums, all is the work that is done in our presentation systems group, from design, working with architects all the way through installation, long-term support. And finally, we maintain all these things either on a reactive basis. You call us when things go bad, under service and support. That can also be after hours, whether you have a contract or not. If it's after hours, just follow the voice prompts on our main number, or a proactive model rather, which is under managed services, where we are the IT department for dozens of organizations in the region. So that's a little bit about System Source today. We do have some upcoming webinars. One is coming up next week, looking at managed IT services. If you're considering that, what should you specific results that you should expect from a vendor that you're considering? We'll then look in on the 24th at vulnerability scanning and pen testing, so you can figure out what's going on in there, so you'll know how to mitigate it or what to do about it. And then finally on the 6th, for educational institutions, we're going to do a deep dive into what the annual Verizon security incident report has to say about what is facing educational organizations. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Mike, please.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, appreciate everybody joining and making the time for us this afternoon. And yeah, we'll keep it informative. If you have questions, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll get those answered. So as discussed, really what we're going to talk about here is, how our managed XDR solution is going to boost security for organizations of industries of all shapes and sizes. And for anybody that isn't familiar with the term XDR, it's really the managed security aspect. You get the 24/7, 365 rapid response, monitoring of all the assets around the clock. XDR stands for extended detection and response. So my name is Mike. I've been here at Barracuda about 5 years, working specifically just with this solution. So very familiar with it and confident that I could hopefully help you all learn some good stuff today and why something like this may be important. So in terms of like the trends and the evolving concerns, here at Barracuda, we are in a good position to understand, what's changing, what's not changing, because we have been doing this for, the better part of 20 years. So we've seen trends that in 2000 are much different than what they are in 2025. So we really have to kind of make sure that our product and our solutions across the board are evolving with these changing trends to, make sure that we're defending in the best possible state for the customers that we protect. The cyber attacks, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this, and you probably wouldn't be joining a webinar about this topic if you weren't aware that they are increasing. Travelers has reported that 36% of businesses have suffered a security breach. 27 of those were victims of ransomware. Corvus states that 93% of successful ransomware events included data theft, typically for double extortion. For anybody who is not familiar with that term of double extortion, it's really kind of a very messed up thing that unfortunately those who are affected by ransomware tend to experience, because the first part of the extortion is, okay, you owe us $100,000 just to remove the encryption that we've deployed across the entire business. But the part that is the double aspect, and sometimes triple, is they have in many cases stolen information, stolen data as part of deploying that attack. So you pay them to remove the ransom, but then at the same time, it's like, well, what about all the data that they've now stolen, which they'll then come back and extort people again and say, hey, by the way, you paid us already, but, we actually are going to need the same payment again if you don't want us to release all these personal identity information identifiers and things like social security numbers and credit cards and addresses and all that, because once they have that data, having that data is almost as important as the business getting rid of the ransom, so they're willing to pay for it, and we see that happening very often. Net Vigilance reports that there have been 64% of all claims submitted by the small and medium enterprises experiencing these cyber attacks were the result of ransomware. 98% of claims were for small to medium enterprises. And this really demonstrates how vulnerable most small to medium enterprises are to ransomware threat actors. So some of the different trends that we are seeing, and Chris kind of touched on this a little bit at the very beginning, but the AI generated attacks are certainly something that are exploding in terms of popularity. If you think about an actor that doesn't speak English, as an example, that's trying to breach a business that is an English speaking organization. In the past, it used to be, oh yeah, if the language doesn't really make sense, it's kind of a huge red flag. But in today's day and age, they could just go on ChatGPT and say, write me a phishing email that is English perfect text, and they'll get that without, too much effort. Ransomware as a service. That's where people go to work, and their job is to work for ransomware companies. Like, we all have jobs here that are legitimate. There are people who make a lot of money going to work for these ransomware companies, and money is a driver for people to do bad things. So that's a real problem we're facing against. Increased phishing attacks. Phishing's been around for a while. It's not going away. Double or triple extortion. We've talked a little bit about what that means already. Increased cyber insurance requirements, where a lot of these companies that are insurers are now mandating that these solutions be in line. They are no longer saying you can have a security operations center if you would like. It's now to the point where they are mandating that on the behalf of customers. And then the increased industry compliance requirements. We all know different compliances that have to adhere to these certain different things are in line, and something that people have to adhere to and buy these XDR style solutions for. So in terms of the nation state threat actors, we can see here that the United States continues to be one of the most targeted countries, actually the most targeted country, followed by some other pretty well-known large countries there. Unfortunately, us all being based in the United States, we are the ones who are feeling the effects of these nation state threat actors. In terms of the top targeted sectors worldwide, you can see here there's quite a few different, there's no real industry that's getting targeted. There's no discrimination in terms of who these threat actors are going after. They want to get the piece of the pie from anybody that they can. We see a lot of IT gets breached a lot. Typically, managed service providers and IT providers are very much a big target because they know that they tend to have a grip into large audiences that they may support. Education and research, government, think tanks, NGOs, transportation, consumer retail, finance, manufacturing, communication, and other. Again, we have business types of every realm here. I can't think of one that is not on the list. Kind of goes to show that, again, no one is really safe from this sort of thing. Now, in terms of what we'll talk about around the product today, a big piece of this to keep in mind is that our solution requires people to be working 24/7, 365. Barracuda XDR has teams of 24/7 individuals. System Source has teams that are working around the clock. So that's really where this talent shortage is not something that anyone that works with either of our companies or both of our companies, really, we deliver the service through partners like System Source, has to worry about. Because there is a global talent shortage, meaning even if an organization has the money to spend to try to do what we're about to talk about in-house, finding engineers to work for those jobs is quite difficult given the amount of open jobs that there are. And in many cases, it's very expensive, where doing it internally doesn't really make sense when you can outsource to professionals that have the talent and can retain the talent. So, I know a large majority of the audience is based within the Maryland area for today's meeting. So we wanted to kind of show some stats that are specific to the area of where most of us are kind of reporting in from. So the national average for a senior cybersecurity engineer is just over $200,000 annually. And what we mean by a senior cybersecurity engineer is 9+ years of experience as that role. So not just someone who's brand new to the industry. We're talking about well-known people who have been doing this a long time, who are highly sought after people in terms of providing the level of engineering that they do. In Baltimore, it's just about that, 200,000. Columbia, 200,000, and in DC, I'd say probably somewhere around 225,000. So in 9 times out of 10, this is for one engineer. So our style solution that we're about to talk about in many cases will save you money on this, and then you don't need to worry about how do I find the talent, how do I retain the talent. If I'm paying them the national average of 200K a year, but Amazon Web Services wants to give them 300,000 a year, you may spend all this time training somebody, and then all of a sudden they're saying, yeah, I'm good, I'm actually going to go take this other job because they're doubling the salary that you're paying me, and I'm going to be doing the same thing. So it's a real problem that we see is A, finding the talent, B, retaining the talent. And this is something that we help with because we have all that talent available today through partnerships with, your businesses that would decide to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and work with System Source. We want the Barracuda XDR solution. That's where, we have all that kind of taken care of. Some of the organizational concerns that we will assist with through the XDR platform is, if anyone that is on the line today feels that they have limited or no cybersecurity expertise or their response capabilities are limited, operational downtime, like you worry about what happens if my reputation gets damaged. What happens if do you need help with seeing your security layers in terms of visibility? Like, do you have like a firewall producing logs? Do you have a server producing logs? Do you have Microsoft 365 producing logs, and you kind of monitor each of those disparate dashboards, or do you have a centralized place where you could log in and see everything happening? Alert fatigue and false positives. So big problem we see is people that get so many alerts, they kind of ignore them. We see a pretty common thing is called MFA fatigue, where a threat actor is brute forcing somebody's MFA, and they're getting hundreds of notifications on their phone. Hey, attempted login, attempted login, attempted login. And some people will just say, it was annoying. I got 200 notifications, so I just approved it because that way I would stop getting them. That's a very real example of alert fatigue, and that kind of lets the bad guys right in. It doesn't matter how good defenses are if you let them in. And then regulatory and compliance requirements are definitely things that we can assist with, and some of the concerns that will be alleviated through this offering. So AI, very important. It is really something that we are going to be seeing a lot of and that we utilize as part of our offering. So it's really changing the way that cyber attacks are created. Like I kind of gave an example before with the ChatGPT. Some additional examples is that the way that they're able to automate tasks, the way that they are able to be more adaptive and bypass traditional defenses and really exploit vulnerabilities with greater speed and precision. So we see a lot of increase in these due to volume and automation. Targeting is now much easier. They're able to simplify and customize personalized threat emails and different threats. And code generation to exploit vulnerabilities is another real threat. Like, for example, Black Mamba ransomware is a type of thing that we have seen, and it is a polymetric malware that dynamically generates malicious code using natural language processing to evade detection by traditional security systems. It leverages adaptability, really looking to bypass defenses, and poses a significant threat to organizational and personal security. So low barriers of security means and low barriers of entry means it doesn't really take an expert to know how to use this because AI is generating. It has automated invasive behavior that's going to blend in using machine learning capabilities and help or attack people with command and control communication, ultimately looking to exfiltrate the data. So with all this stuff being said, great, we understand cybersecurity problem. I may be preaching to the choir with some of the members on the call here. So let's kind of go into, the solution itself and where we can help. So how do we defend against these complex threats? Well, there's really 5 simple steps that organizations can implement to ensure that they have essential security hygiene. So step 1 is to identify what matters most. Determine the critical data, systems, and processes unique to your business. This is going to be a pivotal step in developing a comprehensive incident response and disaster recovery plan. You're going to want to think about what information, if lost or compromised, would impact the operations most. Step 2 is to layer your defenses around your valuable assets. Just as a castle has multiple walls, you need to establish multiple layers of security around your vital data. This concept, often referred to as defense in depth, is about knowing where your data lives and then protecting it accordingly. Step 3 is to detect anomalous activity. So this is done with continuous monitoring because you may not be able to detect a dormant ransomware or a subtle leak of critical information without this effective monitoring. So that means it needs dedicated attention, acting as eyes, watching over your data assets and your digital assets 24/7, 365. Step 4 is to accelerate your response time. Having that proper monitoring in place will reduce your response time, meaning that the faster you identify unusual activity, whether it's on your network or devices, the quicker you can address the issue before it escalates into a significant problem. And then number 5 is to improve your recovery capabilities. So thoroughly test your backups, understand what a recovery point objective and recovery time objective are. Have a game plan ready when disaster strikes. This is really the critical steps you're going to want to think about if you want to have very good cybersecurity hygiene. And this is NIST saying this. It's not Barracuda's kind of recipe. It's NIST, who is a very well-known industry leader in terms of compliance and what good looks like for security. Now, generally, we see a lot of organizations follow the traditional approach of investing in controls that fall within the protect and recover functions. What we see as a common practice is legacy endpoint protection, firewalls, and backups. However, we see that there is a large gap in the detect and respond functions. Cybersecurity is a moving target. We ultimately need to stay as close to that moving target as possible. And the only way to do that is to have visibility and response capabilities within your business. So this is where Barracuda XDR can help. With Barracuda XDR, we provide continuous monitoring with a team of security professionals around the clock. This includes threat hunting and alerting. Having the ability to monitor your environment leads to a swift response time. Our Security Operations Center can offer incident analysis, automated response, and threat isolation, all by using our SOC runbooks and playbooks. And I'm going to give some actual live demonstrations here at the end to showcase, what that looks like in real action. So what is Barracuda Managed XDR? Well, Barracuda Managed XDR in simple terms is an incident detection and response solution that integrates multiple security products into a unified platform backed by a 24/7, 365 security operations center, otherwise known as a SOC. It collects and correlates data from various security layers, like endpoints, servers, network technologies, email protection providers, and cloud services to provide advanced threat detection, visibility, and response capabilities. So there's really 6 different components of Barracuda XDR. There's one that's brand new that actually isn't even on the slide yet because it's so new. So the one that's missing is managed vulnerability scanning through Rapid7. That's a brand new solution that we've released as part of our XDR approach. So if anyone needs to have vulnerability scanning as part of their compliance, you could buy Rapid7 through System Source, which comes through Barracuda, which comes as a managed vulnerability scanning service. And some of the key benefits aside from this and the different products. So cloud security is going to be monitoring for your Microsoft 365, your Azure, your AWS, Okta, Duo, Google Workspace. Server security is going to be monitoring for your servers. So I'm looking at the logs produced by servers to monitor them 24/7, 365 for the types of threats that are generally missed by endpoint protection, such as privilege escalation, things like brute force attacks, login activity that's anomalous. Network security is going to be looking at your firewall logs, monitoring those logs 24/7, 365. And then in addition to that, we'll be also monitoring your network traffic with the ability for us to automatically block malicious IP addresses on those firewalls in real time as part of our automation. Endpoint security, we have a demo for our managed endpoint security solution that I'll showcase here in a little bit. But if you have an endpoint security solution already and you just want us to monitor your existing solution, we can do that as part of endpoint security as well. And then the email security is going to be a layer above Barracuda, a layer above Mimecast, or a layer above Microsoft 365 Defender for email, depending on what solutions you all utilize. And the benefits you gain: 24/7, 365 SOC, automation and AI, centralized security data, and I'll talk about what that means on the next slide here. proactive threat hunting, a vendor agnostic model. We're not requiring anybody to use Barracuda tools for this. You could use varieties of competitors. We have about 40 plus different integrations with competitive technology that kind of shows the vendor agnostic approach that we have. You have Cisco, FortiGate, Meraki, Symantec, and we work with all these different tools as part of this offering if you wish to keep what you have. And of course, Barracuda makes tools for a lot of these different areas as well. Predictable cost model, meaning, the cost you sign up for is the cost you will pay for this. There is no hidden fees, there's no gotchas. It's all kind of part of the holistic model that we offer. Customizable executive reports and more. So the security event workflow looks something like this, where you have events that are triggered, and those events are really any single action that is logged or recorded by a computer. These events can be coming over to our platform by a API connection, by a TCP endpoint stream, by a physical collector, by syslog forwarding. Depending on the technology we're referencing, we will have different ways of collecting this information. Those events get sent into our XDR analysis platform, which is our fully managed SIEM, our SOAR automation platform, our threat intelligence platform, to where these alarms are then produced. The alarms are going to be any activity that is correlated from multiple events that poses risk. So these are investigated, these are cross-correlated, these are validated, and then ultimately we're issuing you an alert where we feel that there is some sort of threat that we either A, took action on, or B, are bringing to your attention because we feel that it is going to be something that you need to adhere to and kind of look at. And if you agree with what we're finding, then yes, it is a threat and you're going to need to take action on that. So a step over from here is going to be the SOC. So the Security Operations Center is very much going to be part of this team that we're talking about. I keep saying the 24/7, 24/7, 24/7. Well, this is kind of what it looks like. So there's a blue team that's going to be doing defensive security. They're going to be opposing the red team, protecting systems and data, incident guidance. You have the green team, who's our endpoint security engineering team. So we provide a fully managed endpoint security offering through SentinelOne, and this team manages the SentinelOne. They do device policy management, they respond to threats, they do attack and defend exercises. We'll showcase exactly what that team's day-to-day looks like through the end of this presentation here. The purple team is looking to improve efficiency. So if there's something that we can do with automation, or a way that we can enhance our processes, or a way that we're able to really make our offering better, like improving the overall SOC, that is what the purple team does. They live, eat, and breathe improvements. They're doing improvements all day, every day, looking for ways to enhance our offering and make them better. The red team is looking at the exploitation of weaknesses. So their job is to build new rules. They're looking at new use case developments, threat intelligence, threat hunting, R&D into different threats, all sorts of ways that we would defend and really stay ahead of the curve, more of an offensive approach versus a defensive, where we're kind of looking and defending against the attacks that are present. Offensive is looking for new ways of finding attacks. And then the white team is overseen by, or is leadership that oversees the rest of the SOC teams that we have here. So through a partnership, you don't need to worry about how do I get involved with level 5, level 4, level 3, level 2, 1. It's all one team, one point of contact, and they work together seamlessly. So some of the statistics about our offering is that we, in 2024, logged 11 trillion IT events. This represents about 350 events per second, identifying 1 million potential risks. We saw that email-based attacks were the 5th most detected threat, and we saw that ransomware threats increased 4x, driven by prolific ransomware as a service activities. We've talked a lot about that already, what ransom as a service is. We see it firsthand. It's a huge problem. So in terms of AI, like how is Barracuda using AI to defend against these threats? Well, we built Sage AI using the most advanced AI models, including Anthropic through Amazon and OpenAI from Microsoft. These models run on a hyperscale infrastructure, and they are trained with our cybersecurity data, threat intelligence, and XDR playbooks. This setup allows us to quickly detect and respond to threats, enhancing our ability to protect against attacks. And all of this is running on Barracuda's secure and reliable infrastructure. So we here at Barracuda use AI in the following ways. Automation. So really, automation, AI are used for things like faster time to response, automated incident response, increased correlation and historical context analysis, reduced alert fatigue. We've maintained a 90% true positive rate through these different platforms. To kind of show how this works, so traditionally, a SOC investigation will look like this. A SOC analyst would have multiple tabs open, navigating through various threat intelligence engines to determine the reputation of an IP address. This process is time-consuming and inefficient. With Sage AI, analysts can directly ask for the reputation of an IP address and receive additional details such as the types of attacks associated with that IP. And this is going to really help us to streamline our approach, not only saving significant time, but also enhances the quality of investigations and recommendations provided to our customers, ultimately improving time to value. So to kind of showcase, what this looks like here in terms of the machine learning detections that we offer. So we have a customer here, we'll just kind of showcase their normal activity where there is 130 logins coming from Los Angeles area. So we see that as their normal activity. This customer also frequently flies to New York. So they log in there, 20 times. They have an office over in New York, so they're going there. We see that as legitimate. This person also frequently travels to Brazil for vacation. So we see that they have had a login activity pattern of there, which has been established as normal. However, when we see that one odd login from a place like Moscow, Russia, this now appears to be malicious, where we are kind of going to notice that through our machine learning, alert on it, and let the customer know, hey, we saw this happen. We've never seen this happen for you before. Is this something that is authorized? And if not, here's the steps you're going to want to take. So now we have a couple of demos we want to showcase that kind of, put some more proof into the pudding, basically more than just showcasing slides. So the first threat simulation we have here is our XDR managed endpoint security. So for anybody that goes with the managed XDR endpoint security solution through SentinelOne, this is exactly what they would gain. So in this demo, we have a test machine that is running here. This test machine has all the protection modes turned on. It has, very different detection engines as well, looking at all different types of AI. So now what we're also going to show is that we have all these different types of threats, ransomware, malware, etc. We have PDF files, and we have the SentinelOne agent. So the first thing we're going to showcase is, how good is SentinelOne at detecting threats? So we have 91 different threats here. We're going to run this test and see if it detects and blocks all 91. So you can see, as we get to this test completion, 100% detection rate, which is great. 91 out of 91 executables blocked and mitigated. However, no solution is perfect. Absolute guarantees are just impossible to say. So what we want to showcase here is now, everything looks good, that PDF open. Let's switch this machine into detect only, meaning it's going to simulate a real world attack, meaning that we'll see ransomware deploy and encrypt all these documents that we just showed within that test environment. So we're going to kind of showcase this because typically if you have an EDR and ransomware does get effective on your machine, it gets around it, you're out of luck. Now with SentinelOne, that's not the case because we're going to showcase exactly what we could do 24 hours a day if this happens, where a threat gets past SentinelOne. So you can see here, this thing is now lighting up, infected. If we take a look at the bottom left, those files are all becoming encrypted. What just opened up as a normal PDF is now an encrypted file. We're going to try to even prove that and show you, a ransom note pops up. This is as real as it gets in our test environment. Don't try this at home. We have experts that are doing this in a safe place. We open this up again, notepad, it's not opening. You can see once we do get it to open, it's now all these characters, which that's as encrypted as it gets. For most people, if your EDR fails and this happens, you're out of luck. With SentinelOne, it's not the case. We're able to highlight all these threats and we're able to click 4 buttons, kill, quarantine, remediate, roll back. mark it as a true positive, and then we'll flip back over to that test machine, and all of the damage is reversed. Where the ransom note goes away, the files are back as a normal PDF, and we'll even prove that because we're going to open those files for you. The machine is now secure. That was just infected. We open one of these up, and we see here it is now usable. And what the customer sees through all this is a dashboard that shows you all the threats that were handled by us and all the threats that were mitigated. So no one who uses this solution needs to know, well, how do I know what buttons to click, or how do I know what to toggle on or off, or how do I know if it's in the right monitor mode or monitor plus detect? We handle all the configurations, we handle the management. It's all done by our team of experts, that green team that I showcased in the SOC a few minutes ago, a few slides before this. They do this 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We have another example we want to showcase. So our automated threat response for Microsoft 365, where we are able to automatically remediate a business email compromise, which is also one of the biggest attacks that we see. Business email compromise for a small to medium business is usually a detrimental end of the road style attack, meaning if a small to medium business experiences a business email compromise, I think 60% of them end up going out of business within 6 months. I know there's a stat, and it's more than half. So if that happens to anybody, you have a really 6 out of 10 people that happens to, they will be out of business. And this is kind of how we prevent that from happening. So in this demo, we're going to perform the following. First, we're going to sign into our test account to show you that we can sign in without any issues. The location we're signing in from is currently New York. So we're signed in, all's good, it works as you would assume. So second, we need to simulate an impossible sign-in. So the way we do this is by turning on a VPN service. So now we're going to sign out, and we're going to come over, we're going to log into a VPN, and we're going to go ahead and log right back in after we connect to Tokyo, Japan. The reason we do this is because we want to showcase what an impossible travel looks like and show you that our automation is not going to be triggered based on just a VPN being utilized. Because A, we have a way of seeing that it's a VPN, and B, we don't want to kick people off the network that are simply using a VPN and actually not doing anything malicious. So we now sign back in. We're just in New York. The system now thinks we're signing in from Japan, and all's good. Here is where it gets interesting. So as an attacker, once we are successful and sign in, we're going to go and do a couple different things. The first is we're going to make an email forwarding rule that will forward all messages with the subject of payment, bank, and invoice over to the attacker's mailbox that is going to be labeled hacker 123. So add condition, subject includes invoice, payment, bank, add action, forward to hacker 123. Another action we're going to do is move all of these emails to a folder we're going to label as junk. So we're creating this folder. Folder is going to be called junk. So that if this happens to somebody, they don't look in their sent mail and be like, why are all my emails going to hacker123? As soon as we save this rule, within seconds, the account is now locked and disabled. That is our automation that takes action because we saw the impossible sign-in, the weird login from that VPN, and then we saw those forwarding rules being made, which are very malicious. So the first alert that you will receive is for the impossible sign-in. The second alert is going to be for the suspicious mail forwarding rule. And the third alert is going to be for the action that our automated service took, which was terminate all the user's activity and completely disable their account. So some of the key takeaways from what we've talked about here today to think about, ask yourself these questions, and this may be a reason why Barracuda XDR could be a good fit for you if any of these are a yes. So the first question is, what's your risk tolerance? Do you currently have risk tolerance? Do you have a disaster recovery plan? What is your recovery time objective? How quickly can you recover from an attack? What is your recovery point objective? During a disaster, at what point can you recover from before catastrophic damage? Who do you rely on after hours? Is it you doing this internally 24/7? Do you have coverage on weekends, holidays? When no one is available, is someone watching your network? Do you need to meet any compliance standards or any requirements set forth by insurance, legal obligations? Our managed XDR service has been very successful in helping educational and organizations really meet these requirements. If you feel adequately staffed or don't feel adequately staffed, if you don't, you might need to have some more of our resources assist with the regular day-to-day. So from here, question and answer, I think we're doing this via the chat. So I don't see any questions asked in the chat. Chris, am I seeing that correctly, or am I missing something?
Nope, well, I don't see any questions at the moment, but if some folks have questions, I'll give you a moment to kind of type those in. While you're taking some time for that, I did mention earlier about the evaluation that we offer some additional resources that might be helpful as you're kind of evaluating some of the things that Mike talked about today, what might be beneficial in your environment, what's a good fit, those kinds of things. So some of the things that you'll see there, which you can just ask for additional resources. One is you may want to get a demonstration of Barracuda XDR, but specifically, well, how would that apply to your environment? So you can ask for that, or if you just want additional information on XDR, we can provide that. One thing we did not talk about specifically today is a free email threat scan for Office 365 based email. It's what I call making the invisible visible. So it's looking for, it's a Barracuda tool, it's free. It looks for what is already sitting in inboxes in your environment already that are malicious. They just haven't been activated yet. So it's looking for those things. So then you can say, so we'll go through a report that looks at those things. Then you can decide what you want to do about those things and what approach that you want to take. You may just want a security planning whiteboard session, which is no charge, or you may have some interest in security training classes. All those things are on there, or just let us know what you need. So I do see one question here. It says, we're with Arctic Wolf, and they do monthly, quarterly calls to go over specific topics to tighten up. Does Barracuda offer something similar?
Yep. So we could do a quarterly meeting with a partner success manager and a customer success manager to go in there and explain exactly the threats we're seeing, go over the top targeted attacks you've had, and really ensure that everyone is up to speed with what we're looking at.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Perfect.
Those are all the questions that I see at the moment. So we want to say thanks to everybody for your time. Thank you very much to Mike, especially for the information. And we look forward to being able to chat with you at a future webinar. And with that, we'll give you back another 15 plus minutes for your day. We appreciate your time, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.